everyone. Good morning to you. No, I know it is not morning there, it's the afternoon. And I just want to thank Dr. Noor and the administration for allowing me this opportunity, this wonderful opportunity to take some time with you and talk about two of my favorite subjects, SDG 1 and 8. Pathways to Ending Poverty Through Decent Work is what I'm calling this webinar today. Um, and I'd like to get your attention before I get started. So I have a little video that I prepared for you. Listen to it and then we'll get started right away.
In September 2015, all 193 member states of the United Nations came together and did something extraordinary. They adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. At the heart of this agenda are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You'll see them here on your screen. These colorful squares represent 17 interconnected global goals, ranging from no poverty to climate action, to quality education, to gender equality. These aren't just aspirational statements, they're a call to action. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. The beauty of the SDGs is that they're universal. They apply to all countries, developed and developing alike. They recognize that we're all in this together and that the challenges facing humanity don't respect borders. Today, we're focusing on two of these goals that are deeply interconnected. SDG 1, no poverty, end poverty in all its forms everywhere. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Why these two together? Because you cannot truly end poverty without creating pathways to decent work. And decent work, with fair wages, safe conditions, and dignity, is one of the most powerful tools we have for lifting people out of poverty permanently. Think of it this way: giving someone assistance addresses their immediate need.
But giving someone the skills, opportunity, and support to earn a sustainable livelihood transforms their entire future and breaks the cycle of poverty for generations to come.
Okay, so let's get started. Over the next few minutes that I have with you, we'll explore what these goals mean. Look at some real world success stories from around the globe. We need some of that right now, and discuss how innovation, particularly in technology and entrepreneurship, is creating new pathways forward. So let's get started with SDG 1, the elimination, or I like to say the eradication of poverty. And when I first started looking at it, I was like, eradication, uh, can we really do that? And I was amazed when I started doing the research at how far we've come. We're not where we want to be, but we're a lot further than we were before because of the intentional um, determination but worldwide, but by a few specific examples, and I'll go over those with you shortly. The goal is beautifully simple in its statement, but incredibly complex in its execution. In poverty in all its forms. Doesn't that sound really good? When we talk about all of its forms, we need to recognize that poverty isn't just about income. Yes, the international poverty line is currently set at $2.50 per day. And if you think about that for a moment, imagine trying to feed yourself, your household, clothe yourself, access health care, and educate your children on $2.15 a day. It's almost unimaginable. But poverty goes beyond that number. It's multidimensional. Poverty means a child who can't go to school because they need to work, a mother who can't access basic health care during pregnancy, a family living in unsafe housing with no clean water or sanitation, a community cut off from opportunity by lack of infrastructure, the loss of dignity and hope that comes with persistent deprivation. And it's this, a lot of people think that poverty is only in developing countries. I will tell you, in the US, I just did an interview with a group that they do a lot of fundraising, and right in their community in the middle of Florida, in a pretty progressive neighborhood, uh, they have children that were not going to school. And the reason the children weren't going to school was simply because they had no shoes. So this organization got together, uh, and not just gave the mothers money, but they went out and bought shoes for hundreds and hundreds of children. And the children came and picked out the shoes that they wanted. So poverty is everywhere, not just where you think you know. Eradicating extreme poverty for all people everywhere, reducing by at least half the portion of people living in poverty according to national definitions, implementing nationally appropriate social protection systems, ensuring rights to economic resources and access to basic services. So, and pardon me, I haven't been feeling well, and I have a little cough, so I do apologize for that. But I really did want to give this talk, and I didn't want to postpone it. So hopefully you can bear with me. Now, here is the challenge. Despite tremendous progress over the past few decades, nearly 700 million people, that's almost 1 in 10 people on our planet, still live in extreme poverty today. And the COVID-19 pandemic pushed millions more back into poverty, setting back years of progress. I've been following this for a long time, and we were making some progress towards it. But I will tell you, COVID-19 really, people who were middle class slipped, and people who were in poverty went to extreme poverty. And and a lot of members of different families didn't make it at all. So this is crucial. We also have proof that large-scale poverty reduction is possible. We have examples of countries and programs that have successfully lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. And that's what I want to share with you. We all know the poverty story, but I want to share with you the hope and the will to lift folks out of poverty. Right there in Pakistan, you have I was told you have a high rate of poverty and extreme poverty. So I want to just give you some hope and look at some of the most remarkable success stories in modern poverty reduction. Let's go first to Brazil, Familia. Uh, Brazil's Bolsa Familia program, which translates to family allowance. This is the world's largest conditional cash transfer program, and it's a masterclass in smart, targeted poverty intervention. Here's how it works. The Brazilian government provides monthly cash stipends directly to low-income families, and this is key, there are conditions attached. Family must ensure their children attend school regularly. Okay, that is key. Remember, I talked about the children who weren't going to school because they didn't have shoes? Well, this is key. The children must go to school. Uh, and the second part of this is they must get vaccinations. So they are looking at both the education and the health of that next generation. If we could keep the health and the educational stable, then we have a shot. So why is this brilliant? It addresses poverty at 2 levels simultaneously. Uh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so immediate relief. The cash transfer helps families meet their basic needs. Okay. Uh, we got the education and we got the health care, and the kids are taken care of. All right. So let me keep moving on. I I get so excited. I got to keep up with my slides. Okay. All right, let me give you some numbers about the Brazilian story. During President Lula's first term, poverty in Brazil fell by 27.7%. So it's not just the policy, this is the execution of the policy in the program by this administration. The program reached approximately 12 million families, that over 50 million people. Studies show Bolsa Familia was responsible for 28% of total poverty reduction in Brazil. School attendance in the poorest regions improved by 14%. Child malnutrition decreased by 16%. And here's something powerful. Follow-up studies showed that 64% of poor children enrolled in 2005 had escaped the program by 2019 because their family circumstances had improved. The World Bank evaluated this program and found that 94% of the funds reached the poorest 40% of the population. That's another problem with some of the programs that have been executed. The funds just don't get down to the people who need them the most, but that didn't happen here. That's an extraordinary targeting efficiency. But perhaps most importantly, Bolsa Familia changed the narrative around poverty assistance. It showed that with the right design, social programs can break intergenerational poverty cycles while maintaining dignity and incentivizing positive behaviors. The model has been so successful that nearly 20 countries have adapted it, including Mexico, Chile, Indonesia, South Africa, and even New York City. I mentioned that we have a lot of poverty in the US in pockets that are just not talked about. And New York City launched a program based on this model. So we need more models that we can replicate. So let's move on to my next story, China. Now, this one is interesting too. China's poverty alleviation story, and this is truly a historic achievement. The numbers here are almost hard to comprehend. Since 1978, when China began opening up and reforming its economy, nearly 800 million people have been lifted out of extreme poverty. That's a big number. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire population of Europe. It represents approximately 75% of all global poverty reduction over that same period. You see what we can do when we have the will to do. I talk about that a lot. It's not so much the resources, but it's the will to change, and China had the will to change. The poverty rate in China fell from 88% in 1981 to just 0.7% in 2015, according to the World Bank measurements. How did this happen? China's approach rested on two main pillars. Pillar one, broad-based economic transformation. China opened its markets, embraced foreign investment in special economic zones, focused on manufacturing and exports, and created massive opportunities for people to earn higher incomes. Can I say that again? People to earn higher incomes. That is key to lifting people out of poverty. Average incomes increased fivefold between 1990 and 2000, then fivefold again between 2000 and 2010. There was prosperity enough for everyone. This rising tide did lift many boats, but not all boats equally. Okay, so, you know, Everyone is not going to experience the same thing, but the fact that there was a good experience across the country is key. China recognized that some regions and populations were being left behind due to geographic lack of infrastructure or other barriers. So they implemented targeted poverty alleviation programs, including infrastructure investment in rural and disadvantaged areas, roads, electricity, internet, connectivity. You can't have the technology investment if you don't have infrastructure. Education initiatives, ensuring access even in remote regions. Healthcare expansion to underserved populations, underserved in China. Relocation programs to communities in extremely inhospitable areas where there was just no hope. They moved them to a place where they would have hope, and specialized support for households stuck in persistent poverty. Understanding that bootstrapping isn't the same for everybody. Some people have a little longer boots to go. Between 2012 and 2020 alone, China dispatched 255,000 teams and over 3 million people to the countryside as special commissioners for poverty relief. The World Bank 2022 report on China's poverty reduction emphasizes that success came from sustained, coordinated effort combining economic growth with active government interventions. So the government has, I find in most of these solutions is private-public partnerships. No one individual, no one organization can do it alone, but they combine their resources, human capital as well as real capital, to make a difference. Now, I want to be balanced here. China's approach was unique to its context, its political system, its economic structure, its scale. Not every element is directly transferable to other countries, but the lessons are universal. Sustained economic growth matters, education and infrastructure investments matter, targeted support for those who can't access growth opportunities matter, long-term commitment and coordination matter. Okay? So, perhaps most importantly, large-scale poverty reduction is possible with the right combination of policies and investment. So I've given you two examples. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my own work, and the work that I've done for several decades. Uh, I believe empowerment comes between several pillars. I work at the intersection of technology, entrepreneurship, and economics, economic development. And so let's talk about AI and community empowerment. I do believe that we're seeing AI transform education access. Students in remote and underserved areas can now access high quality educational content, personalized tutoring, and learning resources that were once only available to a privileged few. We're seeing AI powered tools help entrepreneurs start and scale businesses. This is very important in communities where capital is limited, and the entrepreneurs can scale without excessive need of capital. So we're seeing AI help communities build sustainable economic ecosystems, matching skills with opportunities. The key is ensuring these tools are designed not just for the community, designed with, not just for the communities. A lot of times you see a lot of top-down policies coming to the community, and they haven't, as we saw in the video, worked with those who are already there, those who uh, they haven't worked with the community. All right, so I did a couple of presentations last week. One was basically on intergenerational design and workforce development, and the other was on really peer-to-peer engagement. And all of those things have to play when we're talking about working in our community and working with entrepreneurs. I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the EEL lab, the experiential learning lab. It was to provide a comprehensive experience for the students. Many students haven't run a business before, haven't, in our specific case, many of our students hadn't been out of the state, much less the country. And awareness in how other people do business is very important because business is global, especially with the internet. So you could have a business in your garage, your bedroom, and be selling goods and services to people in different cultures and different countries. And it's important to understand that business as usual will put you out of business, especially as fast as things are changing now. So what we did was we tried to have a complete ecosystem around the students. We gave them a boot camp. We had pitch competitions. We had mentors who had industry experience. Many of the students traveled to 12 to 15 different countries. Now, they didn't do the normal study abroad where you go for a whole semester um, and one student goes at a time. We took them as a cohort. They went for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks until we covered countries and different all over different continents. So that experience changed their awareness of what entrepreneurship could be and what business could be, not necessarily what it was with their own experience. We did a lot of research. The students did research. I personally co-edited about 3 different volumes on the future of work and entrepreneurship for the underserved. uh, I believe the last one was sustainability and the future of work and entrepreneurship for the underserved. The work brought many global scholars together with many different perspectives. And I always, people don't like to talk about diversity now, but I talk about diversity, inclusiveness, and the ability to collaborate. And I've been talking about that for a long time because collaboration is key. There was no way we could put together that EEL program alone and by ourselves. It took the community. We actually had in the Community Economic Development Center, we had a lab there. They came and they actually helped to be on our staff to support us. So it's cohesive coordination, collaboration that would make it work. So let me go to the next chart. Let's start with decent work. Okay, when we did the entrepreneurship lab, it was for several reasons. Even though we are in the heart of New York, the financial district, sometimes it was very difficult for the students to find work. And the president at the time wanted us to have a way that if our students couldn't find work, that they could be job creators in their communities and create jobs for others who also needed and wanted work. So it's important to say that yes, we go through the academic training. Yes, there are opportunities out there, but sometimes we have to make our own opportunities, and that was one of the principles that we envisioned and we embraced. Okay, because I keep getting off on tangents. I want to keep to my notes. Poverty isn't just about lack of money. It's about lack of agency, lack of opportunity, lack of belief that change is possible. Our interventions must address all of these dimensions. We need to provide capital, yes, but I seem to, most new businesses are not going to get capital from venture capitalists. They're not going to get capital from the banks. And it's going to be sweat equity, friends and family, and you run out of friends and family money fast if you're not producing and you can't return their money back or give them a ROI that they were looking for. So, you know, our when we look at what we did, we had to say, well, how can we help the students not let capital be about barrier? And also the education that we were giving them. You know, sometimes the education that we were giving them was behind. Just like right now, anything you learn in AI 6 months from now, maybe a year from now, but 6 months from now, it could be obsolete. And let me tell you where I learned that lesson. I learned that lesson decades ago in IBM. I was on IBM. I was uh, the manager, the leader of the executive briefing center, where we would bring in executives and show them the new trends and applications. And what I found was initially when I started, the applications would last 18 months and then 1 year and then 6 months. Some of these applications now don't even last 6 months. So it's imperative that we learn how to learn, because the education is lifelong. Now we will need to continue to learn. Also important is the kinds of networks that the students can build. We actually encourage them to join association, pay some of the association fees for them so they could join, so that they could have better quality networks. So when they either went out to get that job or either develop that business, that they had people in their network that could support and help them. Role models are important. You know, I don't know if I would be an economist today if I did not see the first economist that looked like me. When I saw that person was an economist, I was like, I love economics. Maybe I too could be it. But I have to be honest, I never had a female um, uh, 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 black economist to teach me in the classroom. So anyone I saw out there who was a woman, because in the business world, and you know, maybe in some other areas, it's easier. But I will tell you, being a woman in business as an economist was very tough. There were not that many folks like me, and so I had to learn how to learn from everyone. And if I found a woman who could help me, and throughout my career, lots of women have helped me. And I've tried to help lots of women as well. You always try to give back, but I've also helped a lot of men too. Um, because it's difficult to do it by yourself. And if you have help, you can do it better and make, and I'm all about contribution. You can make better and more improved and quicker contributions if you have a role model. And also the platforms and tools, they're changing so fast. Oh, I even at my age, I continue to learn and love to learn. I learn about the different softwares. I take classes, and then I try to improve on my work. And you know, say for instance, this particular picture that you're looking at, uh, those are real students, but that is not the real facility that they were in. I learned within the last few days how to take the the people and put them in a facility that I wanted to. And I'll show you a few more other tricks, but the point is education can't stay the same. We've got to continue to learn. I want to emphasize three principles in all my work: equity, empowerment, and empathy. You know, the reason I love to travel so much is I get to see how other people think, live, and enjoy life. And it's hard to do that if you've never experienced it. I remember, you know, I lived in Tanzania, East Africa one while, um, earlier, very, very early in my career. But prior to that, I thought Africa was a scary place. It wasn't until I went and I found the people were so warm and inviting and courageous that I really had empathy for some of the experiences that they were going through. Okay, so those are my three areas: equity, empowerment, and empathy. When we approach poverty alleviation with these principles, using the tools and technologies of our age, transformation change becomes very much possible. Okay, let me see. I'm going to move on, so we'll get a few success stories about decent work and economic development. The first one I want to talk about is the fair trade movement. Uh, and and this promotes sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Okay, so there's a lot there, so let's unpack it. First, sustain inclusive, sustainable economic growth, not just any growth, not boom, bust cycles, not growth that benefits the wealthy, not growth that destroys the environment, but sustained, long-term, inclusive, benefiting everyone and sustainable, protecting our planet. Second, full and productive employment. Everyone who wants to work should be able to find work that makes good use of their skills, talents, and abilities. And that is key, because right now we have, especially among the youth, high unemployment and even higher, I believe, underemployment, which means that they could have work set for their skills. And it's becoming a real problem in some African countries where they're really having revolts. I'm sure you've read about some of that. Third, decent work for all. And this is where I want to pause, because decent work is a profound concept. I just mentioned the underemployment that I believe is so underreported. The International Labor Organization defines decent work as having these characteristics. And let me go to my notes so I can get them all right. Fair wages that can support a family, safe working conditions, social protection and benefits, freedom of association and collective bargaining, dignity and respect, no discrimination, no child labor or forced labor, opportunities for advancement. Think about that list. How many jobs in our world today truly meet all those criteria? You know, and I know, not very many. According to recent statistics, over 200 million people globally are unemployed. 2 billion people work in the informal economy without protections. 152 million children are engaged in child labor. 25 million people are victims of forced labor. So SDG 8 isn't just about creating jobs, it's about creating quality jobs that allow people to live with dignity, jobs that provide security, jobs that offer pathways for advancement. The specific targets under SDG 8 include achieving full employment and decent work for all by 2030. Yeah, I doubt that happens, but that's the goal. Ending modern slavery and child labor. Now, some people may be surprised that slavery still exists. Protecting labor rights and promoting safe work environments. Supporting entrepreneurship and job creation. Reducing the proportion of young people not in employment, education, or training. Promoting sustainable tourism, strengthening financial institutions, capacity to expand access to banking and financial services. There are many countries where people are still unbanked. Why does this matter for poverty? Because in most cases, the single best way to escape poverty is through sustained employment that pays a living wage. Back to your China example. The poverty programs we discuss, Bolsa Familia, China's efforts, they're essential. They provide the foundation, but long-term poverty eradication requires economic systems that generate opportunity and reward work fairly. Let me share a couple of success stories that illustrate different approaches to achieving SDG 8. Oh, let me go back. Okay. The fair trade movement is one of my favorite examples because it's fundamentally about dignity and justice in the global economy. It started with a simple question. Why do coffee farmers in Guatemala, cocoa farmers in Ghana, tea farmers in Kenya work incredibly hard, yet remain in poverty, while the companies selling their products make enormous profits? The answer was a broken supply chain that extracted value from producers and concentrated it with intermediaries and corporations. It's a model that still exists. And, fair trade tried to deal with it. Fair trade emerged as a different model. Here's how it works. Fair trade principles. Producers receive fair prices, not just market prices, but prices that cover the cost of sustainable production and living wages. Long-term trading relationships provide stability and planning ability. Written contracts ensure decent working conditions. Payment terms are favorable, often pre-financing to avoid debt traps. Sufficient lead times prevent excessive working hours and rush conditions. Direct relationships reduce exploitative middlemen. The movement launched in the UK in the year 2000 when this small town declared itself the world's first fair trade town, Garstang. Garstang. I may not have pronounced it. Please forgive me correctly. They got local government, businesses, schools, and faith communities all committed to using fair trade products. The ideas caught fire. Today, there are over 1,800 fair trade towns across 6 continents. And that means that the people in those towns are employed lifting the boat up in those towns. So the impact is for producers in the global south. Fair trade means predictable income they can count on, investment in their communities, schools, healthcare, infrastructure, environmental sustainability. Many fair trade standards include ecological requirements, empowerments, especially for women farmers and workers. And there's a lot more that I could say about that, but I won't. I've worked with several of the African countries. Dignity there recognized as value partner, not just cheap labor. And a lot of times you find these companies go to these countries simply because they want to keep the price down, they want the cheap labor, and the workforce is not getting compensated fairly. For consumers, fair trade means their purchasing choices contribute to justice and sustainability. For local government, fair trade town status means committing to ethical procurement and community values. This is SDG 8 in action, creating economic relationships that dignify work, provide fair compensation, and enable sustainable livelihood. So let me continue a little bit more talking about the EEL lab. I started talking about it before, but I'll talk about it more here with my slide. We didn't just give the students case studies to read about other people's businesses and how they did it. We gave them hands-on workshops. Even with the technology, we had them to develop businesses in the metaverse and to develop services in the metaverse and to look for clients in the metaverse. And we had expert mentors, not just faculty members, but mentors from the industries in our area, financial, retail, and banking. We gave them real world support. Many of them got huge stipends for winning pitch competitions. The first place prize winning competition on one of our competitions was $5,000. And everyone in the competition got some funding for their business. We had the international programs I mentioned to you. But here is a story that is to my heart. We had a young woman who came in and she was in the sciences and she wanted to know, could she be an entrepreneur? And we said, yes, if you go through the boot camp. It wasn't dependent on your major, or to be quite candid, not even your grades. It was on your character and your persistence. If you could get through that boot camp, which was specially designed for our students by an outside firm, because our students didn't have 6 weeks or 4 weeks to go through a boot camp. So we had a compressed boot camp that was developed from a 6-week boot camp into a week. I mean, our students, some of them were working 2 and 3 jobs, some of them were trying to do businesses. And so once they got through that boot camp, and this is what we told the young lady, she would be accepted into the program. Now, our students went through, many competitions in a semester or a term. And they didn't win at first. And our students have a lot of grit. They may not have a lot of resources, but they have a lot of grit and persistence. And they don't like to lose. So I remember one of the last, and it was the last because they discontinued the competition after that. Our students went up and she won first place in the CUNY competition. She was the CUNY pitch competition. She was the first woman ever to have won the pitch competition, that specific pitch competition, and it had been going on for years. So I say that to say that many times you don't have to have everything that everybody else have, but the will. I come back to the will. She had the will to run a business, and he continued to run a business for several years after that. I haven't seen her in a while, but I do know the first 5 years afterwards, she was running a business of some kind. And she pivoted it quite a bit. Sometimes you're running a business and you find out you need to go to a different business or a different service. And she did some of that. But the point is that she wasn't a business major. She didn't have parents who had run businesses, but she had the will. She had an ecosystem that supported her, and she was able to succeed. Okay, so I don't want to talk too much about myself. I talked a little bit about the lab. I've been in this for a long time. I mean, about 30 years. There was not a curriculum for historically Black colleges with a major in entrepreneurship when I first started. We at Hampton University, we were one of 2, but our program, my program that we developed, we graduated the very first majors in entrepreneurship from an historically Black college. And it's because entrepreneurship is the engine to economic development, I believe, and to changing lives. And even if the students don't go into entrepreneurship, they refine their skills, their communication skills, their negotiating skills, their critical thinking skills, their presentation skills. All of those things are improved when they go through, and then they're more ready for the workforce. Or you find very few students after just 4 years or 3 years or how many years of undergraduate training are really truly ready for entrepreneurship. It takes a special person. And We have had several, I've seen several, but the bulk of the students take those entrepreneurial skills inside a corporation and they become entrepreneurs. And so what we are really doing is democratizing entrepreneurship. We say entrepreneurship isn't just for people with wealthy parents and Ivy League degrees. It's for everyone with a vision, determination, and support. Remember my young student who wasn't even a business major. That inclusive economic growth, that job creation, that decent work built from the ground up. So I talked a little bit about that. Let's see. We've done a lot of research and we've been around the globe. So let me combine them together. Looking at SDG 1 and 8 together because they are interconnected. Think about the virtuous cycle. Quality jobs with decent wage lift families out of poverty. Whole families out of poverty. I mean, think about it. I can tell you when we had COVID-19 pandemic, I had some students in the classroom where the whole family was out of work all of a sudden. And it was tragic. And when just one member of the family started working, it lifted the boat. So can you imagine not having food, not knowing if you were going to keep your place and being in school? It was really a hard time for all of us, for all of us. So entrepreneurship training creates new businesses, which create more jobs. Fair trade practices ensure dignified work, which enables sustainable livelihoods. Technology access provides tools for skill development and economic participation. This is why we can't solve poverty without solving unemployment and underemployment. And you can't create truly sustainable employment without addressing the structural issues that perpetuate poverty. So that's why, I absolutely love the discipline of economics because it gives us the macro and the micro to look at society as a whole and not just a part. As we look forward, I see four major trends that will shape our progress towards these goals. One, digital transformation, one of my favorites. People are running away from this AI. I'm running to it. I love it. AI and automation are fundamentally changing labor markets. Some jobs will disappear. It is true. New jobs will emerge. The question is, who gets left behind and who gets to go ahead? We need massive investments in digital literacy and reskilling. We need to ensure that technological change doesn't widen the gap between haves and the have-nots. And it will if we don't figure a way of how to retool, reskill the labor force faster and better than we currently do it. And the academy has got to change. Don't let me get off on my soapbox. But there's also opportunity here. Digital platforms can enable people in remote areas to participate in global markets. Online education can reach populations that traditional education systems miss. AI tools can level playing fields. And that's what I was telling my students way back at Hampton University when we had our entrepreneurship program. I instinctively knew the market performs based on your performance. Online, how you look, what you look like, doesn't matter. What matters is that you could deliver that good a service to that customer and that they are willing to pay you for that. That's what matters. Number two, inclusive business models. We're seeing a rise in social entrepreneurship, B corporations, and mission-driven enterprises that balance profit with purpose. I need to say that again. Balance profit with purpose. Companies are recognizing that doing good and doing well don't have to be mutually exclusive. If I was in church, I would say amen. Fair trade is one model. Social enterprises addressing poverty while remaining financially sustainable are another impact investing that directs capital towards ventures serving underserved population is another. These models show that market forces, when properly channeled, can be powerful tools for poverty reduction. 3, education and innovation. The old model, and here I am on my soapbox, 4 years of university, then a career, is obsolete. We need lifelong learning. So those of you who think that you're going to just be there for a couple of years and go, forget it. Experiential education, like we did in the EEL lab, and pathways that don't all run through traditional institutions. Program like our EEL lab, apprenticeships, boot camps, micro-credentials, these are all part of the future. The key is ensuring accessibility regardless of socioeconomic status. And number 4, technology for good. AI-powered education platforms bringing quality content to rural areas. And I could say to some urban areas, if you see some of the urban school districts that I've seen, digital tools enabling micro enterprises to compete, mobile banking bringing financial inclusion, telemedicine expanding healthcare access. The technologies exist. The challenge is deployment, affordability, and ensuring they're designed with users' needs and context in mind. And I have a whole presentation on just that alone. But here's what I want to emphasize. None of these trends is automatic. None will automatically benefit the poor, the marginalized, or the underserved. They will only advance SDG 1 and SDG 8 if we intentionally design and deploy them with equity, empowerment, and empathy at the core. That's the work ahead of us. So now, let's look to the future. Well, I already gave you that. I'm about to give you the call to action, the global call to action. So, achieving SDG 1 and SDG 8 by 2030, that's just 5 years away. It requires unprecedented collaboration. As I mentioned before, no single government, organization, institution, or individual can do this alone, and it won't happen if we don't get together. We need partnerships across sectors, across borders, across disciplines. So I want to issue a specific invitation today. Partner. And we have started doing some partnerships. In fact, I was there just last August. I think it was August, or might be even September, in Pakistan, in Lahore, with a State Department partnership with Pakistani universities, coming together, exchanging ideas. The State Department actually funded it, but we want more research, more collaboration, more thought between the institutions so that we can do better and be better across many disciplines. So before we move to questions, let me leave you with 6 takeaways. All right. And I'm slowing down. I get my throat, my voice is a little bit challenged. Number 1, poverty is multidimensional. We need integrated approaches that address income, yes, but also education, health, opportunity, and dignity. Proven solution exists. Brazil, China, fair trade, experiential education models. We're not starting from scratch. We know what works at scale. Decent work is essential. You can't sustain poverty reduction without creating quality employment opportunities. Technology amplifies impact. AI digital tools, connectivity can scale solutions, but only when designed with equity in mind. 5, education transforms life. This is the one I really love. And I love it because I take it personally. You know, I'm a first generation college student. Neither parent nor anyone before them had ever had an education. In fact, my grandmother, who was a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, could not read or write, but she had vision. And so today we need to have vision that education in all forms, not just in the academy, not just with degrees, not just with certificates, but education in all forms can transform the life of a farmer, can transform the life of a nurse, can transform the life of that little child that is looking to do more, to be more, especially using experiential entrepreneurial education that builds practical skills and confidence. So, you know, that's one of my favorites. 6, collaboration is critical. Like the collaboration the U.S. universities are doing with Pakistan. Dr. Noor was there when we actually saw 234 students go through training in AI entrepreneurship in a 7-week program. And at the end of the program, they didn't just pitch. I've been through this so many times. A lot of times these programs have pitch competitions, and at the end of the pitch competition, you have a nice presentation, but no business. These young men and women had businesses, and I think the number was 3 million rupees had been generated by the end of the program. Phenomenal. And the program hopefully will be replicated in other places. So my core message: when AI meets purpose, when technology is paired with equity and empathy, when communities work together with clarity of vision, poverty doesn't stand a chance. Neither does unemployment or underemployment or indecent work conditions. The future of work must prioritize equity, empowerment, and empathy. That's how we achieve SDG 1 and SDG 2. That's how we build a more just and prosperous world. So I think I'm sure you recognize that person, and I talked through my takeaways so that you have them now. Uh, and I gave you my core messages. So I'm not feeling well. I was trying to get through it. So at this point in time, I think we should have a few questions. Let's continue the conversation. We welcome your questions on a vast amount of things. I was going to mention to you, as behind this picture is a photograph, just a photograph. This picture is the image of us, a photograph, but the background is different. We were never in that office, but we were together at a conference about 2 years ago. And again, we were together somewhere, but that is a different. So the technology gives us so much ability to be creative and to recreate and to just be. So it is indeed my hope that this has given you some food for thought on SDG 1, which is my favorite, the eradication of poverty, as well as SDG 8, good and decent work, which will help sustain us from that poverty. And with that, I want to say goodbye.